Throughout human history, death has not just been a private affair. There was a time when the ultimate punishment wasn't delivered behind prison walls, out of sight from public eyes, but as a macabre spectacle for the masses. Yes, I'm talking about public executions, a practice that combined brutal punishment with social theater. What lies behind this gruesome chapter of human history? Why were people drawn to watch such unimaginable horror? And what was the dark psychology behind it? Buckle up, because today we're diving into the dark truth of forgotten public executions. Let's set the stage. Public executions were commonplace across many societies for centuries, with events spanning medieval Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and the Americas. But these weren't quiet, somber affairs meant to make an example of the condemned. Instead, they were massive social events attended by thousands, yes, thousands, of ordinary citizens. People would travel from miles away, bring their families, and even pack lunches to enjoy while witnessing someone's final violent moments. Morbidly festive, right? The gruesome methods used during these public executions varied from region to region, but all were designed for maximum pain, humiliation, and psychological impact. Take, for example, the infamous guillotine of revolutionary France, a supposedly humane method of execution. While it was faster than other methods, the shock value of seeing a severed head roll into a basket ensured it became an icon of terror. Before the guillotine, there was trial by ordeal. The condemned would be subjected to impossibly cruel tests of endurance or survival, under the belief that divine intervention would spare the innocent. Ever heard of being boiled alive? Yes, that was a thing. In fact, King Henry VIII of England made boiling a legally approved form of execution in the 16th century, typically for poisoning crimes. Over one chilling afternoon in 1531, an accused poisoner named Richard Rose was publicly boiled alive, while crowds watched in horror and fascination. But don't think this grotesque pastime was limited to medieval Europe. In 19th century United States' Wild West, public hangings were sources of fascination. Town squares were packed with onlookers as they gathered to see outlaws meet their fate. Some hangings were carried out so poorly, like the infamous case of Tom Ketchum in 1901, that the gravity of the event was overshadowed by gruesome accidents. Ketchum's execution went terribly wrong when the fall decapitated him completely, shocking the already eager crowd. Beyond the spectacle itself, let's explore an unsettling question. Why were people so eager to attend public executions? Was it merely morbid curiosity? Scholars say it's something deeper, something almost primal. For one, public executions were a display of authority. They were stark reminders of the state's power over life and death. Watching an execution served as both a warning and a reassurance to citizens. Behave, and this won't be you. There was also an eerie sense of community bonding involved. People came together to witness justice, or at least what their society defined as justice. It was an outlet for society to channel collective emotions of anger or fear, projected onto the convicted individual. If that wasn't already dark enough, consider this. Some historians argue that public executions had commercial value. They weren't just grim spectacles for justice, they were also lucrative opportunities. Vendors sold souvenirs, postcards bearing images of lynchings in America circulated openly, and executioners, who often became morbid celebrities, received handsome payments. Execution Day was business. The psychological effects of these events on the witnesses, particularly children, cannot be understated. Sociologists have long debated whether attending such events desensitized people to violence, or whether it acted as a form of societal control. Either way, it left permanent scars on the psyche of those involved, from the executioner to the bystanders. And don't for a second think public executions are a thing of the distant past. In numerous countries, traces of this grim tradition linger under the guise of justice. While public beheadings may seem medieval, headlines in recent years reveal that some regimes still carry out such practices, with even large crowds gathering to witness. It's eerie proof that the shadow of public executions continues to loom over us. One of the most unsettling instances of public execution took place as late as 1936 in Owensboro, Kentucky. It was the hanging of Rainey Bethea, the last public execution in the United States. Shockingly, local newspapers turned what should have been a sobering event into a morbid carnival. Thousands turned up for the event, some even climbing trees for better vantage points. Rainey's execution became less about justice and more about spectacle, a grim reminder of humanity's bizarre fascination with controlled suffering. What makes all of this even darker is the legacy such punishments leave behind. The buildings that housed public executions, the equipment used, and even the stories passed down create a haunting echo. Many of the places where executions were held are now rumored to be hotbeds of paranormal activity, adding yet another terrifying layer to their history. It's important to remember that in all these cases, public executions were typically framed as moral acts, preserving societal order and justice. But what they often masked was a cycle of violence that didn't necessarily deter crime, but normalized it. In some sense, public executions were humanity's way of confronting mortality, projecting fears, and grappling with guilt, all while hiding behind the veil of justice. Today, as methods of punishment and justice have evolved, much of the civil world has relegated the death penalty to private chambers if it's still practiced at all. And yet, some forms of this gruesome pastime remain, albeit disguised. Think about modern-day fascination with true crime shows, reenactments, and even graphic documentaries. Could these be the sanitized echo of what public executions once were? After all, our curiosity for the macabre hasn't disappeared. It's simply taken on new, less visceral forms. Before we conclude, ask yourself this: what does the practice of public execution say about the cultures that upheld, and in some ways, celebrated it? And does humanity ever truly outgrow its thirst for spectacle? Food for thought, and more than a little weight for the conscience. As we close the curtain on this grim topic, let's remember the importance of confronting these dark chapters in history. They remind us how far we've come, and perhaps more disturbingly, how much of our fascination with darkness still remains.